With this money, Ukraine will be able to fight back in the east, but it will also be able to accelerate the asymmetric warfare that has been most effective on the battlefield. This supplemental funding will ensure Putin faces some nasty surprises on the battlefield.
Right now, and this one is also devastating. 40 or more people is the count who have been killed and at least 100 injured after a shooting when gunmen burst into a concert hall on the edge of Moscow this evening, according to Russian security service.
Today, every inhabitant of this planet must contemplate the day when this planet may no longer be habitable. Every man, woman, and child lives under a nuclear sword of Damocles, hanging by the slenderest of threads, capable of being cut at any moment by accident or miscalculation or by madness. The weapons of war must be abolished before they abolish us.
Okay, so let's get an update on what happened in Moscow last Friday, the deadliest terrorist attack in Russian history. So we have over 100 people dead, over 100 people injured, and we're trying to figure out who did this. The Western media, the U.S. government is chanting ISIS, ISIS, ISIS. The ISIS just came out of nowhere and did this. But some people have many reasons to suspect Ukraine and reasons to suspect the CIA. But let's look at this short clip here to get an update on the latest.
New reports say 3 additional men are now in custody in connection to Friday's deadly assault at a concert hall in Moscow. The arrests come just one day after the 4 suspects accused of carrying out the deadliest terror attack in recent Russian history appeared in court.
Yeah, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, or ISIS, and an affiliate known as ISIS-K, has claimed responsibility for the attack, an attack that killed nearly 140 people and wounded more than 100 others. The 4 men appeared in court with injuries that you could see with your own eye. Russian media reports that the suspects were tortured during their interrogations. That's not investigatory, they're just saying it.
So the Russians arrested 4 men. Putin said they were moving towards Ukraine, and they had people across the border in Ukraine waiting to assist them. This is according to Russian intelligence. Of course, the United States is going to say, oh, Russian intelligence, they don't know anything, they're trash, they're lying. I don't know. But they caught these 4 men, beat them to a pulp. These men appeared in court with black eyes. One guy's ear was damn near severed. And one of them even showed up in a wheelchair to court. So let's take a look at Putin's reaction, his initial reaction to this event.
I am addressing you in regards to the bloody barbaric act of terror that killed dozens of peaceful people who were not guilty of anything, our fellow citizens, including children, teenagers, and women.
Женщины. Главное сейчас не дать тем, кто стоит за этой кровавой бойней, совершить новые преступления.
The main thing is to not let those behind this bloodbath commit new crimes. Regarding the investigation of this crime and results of operational search actions, I can now say the following. All 4 of the actual perpetrators of the act of terror, all those who shot and killed people, were found and detained. They tried to hide and were moving in the direction of Ukraine. There, according to the preliminary information, they had a crossing of the border prepared from the Ukrainian side. Overall, 11 people were detained.
Всего задержано 11 человек. Все исполнители, организаторы.
All the executors, planners, and those who ordered this crime will be rightfully and inevitably punished, whoever they are and whoever directed them. Let me repeat. We will identify and punish everyone who stood behind the terrorists, who prepared this attack against Russia, against our people.
So like I said, the West is screaming ISIS, 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 while the fire on the building was still raging because they burned this building, this massive arena. Think of Madison Square Garden in New York or one of these gigantic NBA arenas where you can see tens of thousands of people. While the fire was still raging on this building, the bodies weren't even cold yet. The men weren't even arrested yet. Russia was investigating. The U.S. came out and said, no, it wasn't Ukraine. It wasn't Ukraine. We have no evidence at all to say that. But look, It wasn't Ukraine. And clearly, the government, the U.S. government, the Pentagon, CIA, somebody sent down word to Western media to immediately start screaming ISIS. Oh, it was ISIS. It was ISIS. It wasn't Ukraine. It was ISIS. Let's take a look at this.
Obviously, now ISIS is claiming responsibility.
The terrorist group ISIS-K has claimed responsibility for an attack.
Like you said, this is an ISIS claim. So
Islamic State, you know, it's ISIS, has claimed responsibility.
Now, of course, ISIS appearing to take credit for this.
So they got the scripts. They got the memo. ISIS, ISIS, ISIS. Because ISIS is a well-known organization for the last 10 years or so by the American people as some ragtag group of terrorists who go to places and just murk people. But here's one thing about ISIS. They usually self-delete when they do it. They don't try to escape. They don't get paid. Apparently, these mercenaries were paid about $5,500 to carry out this thing, whether it was $5,500 each or $5,500 total. They were given a couple $1,000s to do this. ISIS does this for religious reasons. They carry out these acts because they believe that they're a war against their target. But these guys were mercenaries. These guys were trying to escape. They weren't trying to go to Allah. They weren't trying to become martyrs. They weren't doing it for religious reasons. They were mercenaries who received a check and were trying to escape towards Ukraine. Also, another thing about this is when ISIS usually carries out attacks, the official ISIS leadership comes out and claims this. There was a post on some ISIS Telegram that said that in the United States said, well, we don't have any reason not to believe that ISIS did it, so we'll just take ISIS's word for it. If ISIS said they did it, they did it. Just remember, it wasn't Ukraine. It wasn't Ukraine. No, it wasn't Ukraine. So people are saying, well, ISIS, they have reasons to hate Russia because the Russians fought against them in Syria. There was a bombing against a Russian plane in Egypt. ISIS attacked St. Petersburg a long time ago. So maybe ISIS did it. We'll just take their word for it. But remember, again, it wasn't Ukraine. Now, some people in the West, a lot of Americans are way more wise to this because we've been duped so long for the last few decades by George Bush, by the CIA, by the Uniparty. We've been duped so long that people have reasons to immediately doubt anything that the government says. So a lot of people saying ISIS, really, it looks like a CIA operation. It looks like the CIA trained some Ukrainians or had some people over there. Maybe they were from some other country, but they were working on the U.S. intelligence and Ukrainian intelligence to carry out this terrorist attack. We have the former high-level U.S. diplomat, the Russia Hawk, one of the ones who stirred up this Ukraine-Russia controversy to begin with, Victoria Nuland. She was saying, well, Putin, get ready to see some nasty surprises. There's going to be some asymmetric warfare. What does that mean? That means guerrilla type warfare. That means terrorist attacks, stuff like that. So you got high-level U.S. personnel saying stuff like this. You got the terrorists trying to escape to Ukraine. We got the fact that the Ukrainians have attacked Russian territory and Moscow itself multiple times. So a lot of people are saying, we don't know about this. It looks like the Ukrainians might have done this. We might not have a smoking gun, but it looks like when you use your reasoning, when you use your common sense and just put things together, it looks like the CIA and Ukrainians may have had something to do with this. And because a lot of people in the West are doubting this whole ISIS thing, they've come up with a new narrative. They're trying to say, well, it was a false flag. The Russians did it to themselves. Putin committed a terrorist attack against his own people in Moscow in order to blame Ukraine, in order to ramp up the war in Ukraine. Now, like I said, Ukraine has attacked Russian territory and Moscow itself multiple times. So Putin doesn't need to kill his own people in order to justify intensifying the war in Ukraine. So this is another false flag accusation, just like when Nord Stream 2, the pipeline in the Baltic Sea, was destroyed. They said, well, the Russians blew up their own pipeline. And nobody believed that. Everybody knows it was the United States. And Western Europe is afraid to say it was the United States because they're a bunch of weak lackeys. And here's another strange part about this. The United States knew about this. The United States State Department gave a warning to Americans in Moscow. So let's pull up this State Department post here. The embassy is monitoring reports that extremists have imminent plans to target large gatherings in Moscow to include concerts. Are they prophets? Is the State Department a bunch of prophets? Because they put out a warning, a travel advisory to Americans in Moscow talking about there might be a terrorist attack at a concert, and next thing you know, there's a terrorist attack at a concert. And U.S. citizens should be advised to avoid large gatherings over the next 48 hours. Now, there's some reports saying that there was supposed to be a terrorist attack at the same hall a couple of weeks ago before Putin's re-election. But the security was so heavy and so tight that they had to postpone it until this time. So it looks like right before the terrorist attack took place, the United States said, yeah, there's going to be a terrorist attack at the concert. They had hard evidence, and people trying to justify it, saying, well, this Putin's fault because the United States warned them. No, they didn't. They never went through official channels. The top officials, the State Department never contacted the Russian State Department to give them an official briefing of the intelligence that they had. So there was no official warning. There was no official security brief of this thing happening. Now, I don't know what happened, but it just looks like everything is pointing to the American intelligence community, and maybe MI6 was involved, and definitely the Ukrainians. It just looks like it. But they're blaming ISIS. Why are they immediately blaming ISIS? It could be some type of misdirection to immediately push blame. No, it wasn't Ukraine. And if they quickly come out and plant in the people's mind ISIS, people are going to think, oh yeah, it was ISIS. So a year from now, if people bring up this attack, a lot of people who immediately heard ISIS, they're going to say, yeah, ISIS did that. And when you try to say, no, it was the Ukrainians, they already have it set in their mind that it was ISIS, so they're going to push back against it. So it looks like some type of misdirection to try to get the blame off of Ukraine. But Putin is saying now they're in a state of war. It's no longer a military operation, a special military operation. They're at war with the West. And it looks like we're inching closer and closer to World War III. We got Macron over there, along with those weak-ass Baltic states, Lithuania, Latvia, and all them states talking about, oh, we're going to send troops over here. So Macron wants to send a couple of thousand troops to Ukraine, and a couple of hundred maybe from the Baltic states. He's hoping the Poles join them, and they want to go down to Odessa. They want to secure parts of Ukraine. So they know the Russians have already strategically defeated Ukraine, but they want to stop the Russians from taking over the entire country. It looks like the Russians are definitely going to push all the way up to the Dnieper River. We don't know what they're going to do with Kyiv, but France and these other countries want to secure at least the western part of Ukraine to maintain that buffer. And they know that this war is lost to begin with. This is why they want to send troops to Ukraine. They know that the Ukrainians are being wiped out. It's a pretty nasty situation on the ground, and I know the media in the West likes to bury it and not talk about all the blood that's been spilled over there. But doing stuff like this, terrorist attacks, asymmetrical warfare like this, it only makes things worse. So we got a bunch of lunatics in London. We got a bunch of lunatics in Washington, D.C., and these Ukrainians are grasping for life. So they want to pull the West into it. And these lunatics, our leaders, they want to go to war too. So it looks like these people believe, oh, Putin is bluffing. When Putin mentions the red line, when he mentions nukes and stuff like that, they don't believe that he'll actually do it. So they're going to poke and poke and poke until the missiles are flying. Or maybe they might launch some missiles themselves first, especially if these weak-ass NATO countries in Europe put troops in Russia openly, and then these troops get killed. So maybe the troops are bait. So let me know what you guys think about this. Was it ISIS or was it the West? Was it NATO? Was DC behind this? CIA, were they behind this? And if they were behind this, you know the channels will have to go all the way to the top. We're talking about to Biden and his handlers. So how much did they know about this? Do you think Russia is going to respond harshly to this? Are they going to destroy government buildings in Ukraine? Is Zelensky going to be taken out? Let me know what you think. Leave me your thoughts below. Share the video. Thanks for watching.